Hey guys, we're gonna go ahead and continue Peak really quickly. So Josh has just told Peak that he's not taking him up to base camp, which makes Peak kind of feel weird about it. And he's like, "Well, what about me, right?" He doesn't want to sound whiny. Especially Josh has told them, "Don't look at me as your dad. Think about me as your big brother." And so that's an interesting thing, right? But we'll talk a little bit more as we go about that relationship. So he finds out that Zopa, this man that is currently a Buddhist monk, is very well trusted in the community. He used to be a head Sherpa or a Serdar, and people come and ask if they should go up to and climb, and so a lot of people consider what he says as important. He was apparently was very close to Josh, um, and he even had suggested for Josh to not neglect Peak when he was little, and obviously that didn't work out because he did end up paying more attention to the climbing rather than Peak, his son. So Zopa is this character that's described as cagey. So basically, he's one of those people that are very cautious about what they say in front of others. They won't say things unless they think it's important for you to know. And Josh brings that up because he says that there might be an alternative reason why he's taking Peak up more than just the temple that he's at receiving money. So why is he vacationing from being a monk? Why is he taking a break from being a monk? Josh is thinking that there's another reason, but he doesn't question it because, well, Zopa's not going to tell you. He's this guy he's like, like a closed vault. He's going to keep his reasons to himself. And if he wants to let you know, he's going to let you know. And if not, he's not going to let you know anything. All right. Well, now we found out that he's going to be the one that takes Peak up because Josh is very busy and he's got to take care of his clients and he's got to go. But he leaves them with a bunch of stuff. Okay. So he leaves them with a bunch of gear, which Peak will refer to. He refers to the crampons, which is like the things that go under the boots so that they're able to grip onto the ice or the snow. He'll refer to an altimeter watch, which is a watch that helps measure height. He'll also refer to like O tanks, which is just oxygen tanks. I'm trying to think what else he mentions. Pitons, which are kind of like these hooks that are driven into the ice. And I'll show you a picture later just because he does mention it. So basically, I just want to give you an imagery of what potentially Peak's room looks like right now with all the gear. All right, he also refers to a camp stove, and the camp stove, I couldn't imagine what it looks like, so I had to literally look up a camp stove that is for Everest. Because remember, there's less oxygen up there, so I don't know how all the chemistry aspect is like. So I just wanted to see if the stove would be different from someone that's just going to go camping like in the forest or something. But this is what they showed, and so that's kind of the imagery I kept in my head. They'll refer to carbon monoxide poisoning, which is basically an odorless, colorless gas that can cause sudden illness and death if the person is not getting enough oxygen. So it can cause vomiting, chest pain, confusion, because the person's not receiving enough oxygen and they're inhaling carbon monoxide, which can be poisonous if you have way more of that. In our homes, we have carbon monoxide alarms, which are used to make sure that there is no gas leaks around the house, making sure everybody is safe, especially when they're sleeping. He'll refer to freeze-dried beef stroganoff, which I couldn't imagine, so I needed to find a picture. So freeze-dried, I'm sure, is because, well, they're going to be up in the mountain. They're going to have no fridge, and it's going to just help the food stay better or good longer. And beef stroganoff, I just needed to kind of see what it looked like because I couldn't even picture what it was. So it looks like it's noodles and beef. Crevasse basically is a synonym of the word abyss, which is a deep open crack, especially one in a glacier. You see that one right there, right there. It's pretty deep. And K2, I believe it's the Karakoram. That's the real name of the mountain, Karakoram, and it's 2 because it's the second highest mountain in the world after Mount Everest. Mount Everest is the first one, K2 is the next one. I believe Karakoram means black gravel from what I read, so it has to do with the name or with the way it looks. All right, and the altimeter watch, which is, again, it's used to measure height. I'm sorry, altitude, and supposedly it's very reliable and accurate. better than GPS. It probably has a lot to do with the fact that, well, they have to be prepped of where they're at and where they're going. Think about it, it's one of the highest places in the world they're going, and they probably don't have like our basic GPS that works, and they probably need more special equipment. Obviously, that's why it exists, the altimeter watch. And let me actually show you a picture of what it might look like. So this is what it looks like. It seems like right here, it's going up meters, the height. Okay. And he'll refer to a busted motorcycle with duct tape. And I personally have not seen a motorcycle with tape on it lately. So I just wanted to show pictures for imagery, just so that you could see them. And asphyxiation basically means suffocating. You're losing consciousness because you can't breathe. There's no oxygen, or not enough oxygen getting to you. So you can suffocate and potentially die if you're being asphyxiated or suffocated. And then he'll refer to exhaust coming out of a motorcycle, which basically means something's wrong with the engine and the way it's burning the fuel. So look at this picture right here. This guy is completely surrounded by that exhaust smoke, which is not good to inhale, especially because you're going to increase your carbon monoxide intake and decrease your oxygen intake. So that's not good at all. And I just wanted to put a picture of the temple, the Indrayani temple. It's peaceful in comparison to the city. People are praying. There's worshipers there. So they're praying, and it's quiet. It's not loud. Frail, weak, delicate. And a monk is a person that has agreed to live a life of poverty, chastity, and obedience. An example of a monk is a Buddhist man living with other Buddhists and living and following those strict rules. And so this is what you can imagine. You see, these are children too. But Zopa is a Buddhist monk currently. He was a Sardar, remember? He was a Sherpa, but no longer. He is currently a Buddhist monk, and he's vacationing from those promises that he said he would live by in order to take Peak up. And rupees will be referred to. Remember, Josh gave a bunch of rupees or a bunch of money to Peak. Well, here's what it looks like. And guys, one of our dollars is about 76 rupees. So a rupee is not a lot. So you may see this wad of cash. It's not a lot of cash. And I did mention vacationing monk, and I already explained it. It's basically he's taking a pause on the vows, or he's putting on hold his vows in order to take Peak up. So that I'm referring to Zopa. And the piton here it's a peg or a spike driven into a rock or a crack in order to support the climber. So it helps the climber stay on the climb without falling down. It secures them. Sagarmatha is the name of Mount Everest that they also call it. It basically means peak of heaven. Sagarmatha. And they refer to an old blue Toyota pickup. I might have added the old because that's the way I imagined it, but I just want to show you what the blue Toyota pickup could potentially look like. Remember, that's where he started, and it's going to be referred to soon again. And proprietor is a person that is the owner of a business. Offhand, it's like when a comment is made without thinking. Sometimes a lot of us have made offhanded comments, and then we apologize, or someone is offended by it, and then we fix it, right? So it's like to do something without care, without thought, or even uninterested or indifferent, like not caring enough. So it's done offhandedly. All right, so we're continuing with Peak. Gear of the dead. The next morning, after a huge breakfast in the dining room, I came back upstairs and started sorting through the gear. All the stuff didn't make up for all the birthdays and Christmases Josh had neglected, but it came pretty darn close. It was all state-of-the-art equipment, most of which I'd only seen advertised in climbing magazines. Camp stove, coils of rope, cams, titanium ice axe, crampons, thermal gloves, a digital camera, O2 regulator and face mask, tent, Sub-Zero sleeping bag, sleeping pad, the altimeter watch, carabiners, batteries, ascenders, pitons, harnesses, climbing helmet, headlamp, everything I needed to get through the death zone. Most of the clothes were too small, especially the boots. I suppose Josh couldn't have asked my mother for my sizes without tipping her off, and he couldn't have asked me because until I passed the physical, he wasn't sure I was going. Which got me to wondering what he would have done if I had failed the physical. But only for a moment. The gear called to me. Nothing matters when you're up to your knees in brand new expensive climbing equipment. It took me 2 hours to figure out how the altimeter watch worked. An hour to set up the tent. I faced it with the opening toward the window so I could see the Himalayas. I snapped a couple of photos of my view with the digital camera. Then I got hungry and decided rather than going down the dining room, I'd just cook up some food on my brand new camp stove. I know this sounds goofy, but I get a little out of control when it comes to gear. I opened the window so I didn't get carbon monoxide poisoning. As the freeze-dried beef stroganoff was simmering away, there was a knock on my door. I thought it was housekeeping again. They had come by earlier asking to clean the room, but I told them that I had everything I needed and to come back tomorrow. I slithered out of the tent, carefully stepped over the stove so I didn't tip it over and burn down the hotel, and cracked open the door, hoping they wouldn't smell the gas burning or the food cooking. It wasn't the housekeeper. It was a Nepalese boy about my age, but 2 inches shorter. He was smiling up at my head, which is all I had revealed through the crack. Below my head, I had nothing on but my boxers because I had been trying on gear all day and it was getting hot in the room from the stove and the sun coming through the window. Peak wood? He asked. Actually, it's Peak Marcello, but yeah, that's me. My name is Sunjo. Zopa sent me over to bring you to him. Oh, sure. I glanced at the mess behind me. I didn't want to leave him standing in the hallway while I got ready, which was going to take a while. Appearing like a total idiot won over being rude. I let him in. Sanjo looked a bit shocked at the setup, but he didn't burst out laughing, which I might have done if I had stumbled onto something equally as stupid looking as my indoor camp spot. My dad, Josh, got me some new gear, and I was testing it out, so I would know. I'll forget it. I thought I'm just making some lunch. Are you hungry? Sanjo said he was. As I got dressed, I watched him checking out the equipment, and I knew he was a climber. No one else would fondle gear as lovingly. He picked up various items like they were more valuable than gold, which they were when they were the only thing keeping you from falling off a rock face or into a dark, bottomless crevasse. I cleared a spot for us on the bed and served him a bowl of stroganoff and an energy bar for dessert. It turned out that Sanjo's father had been a Sherpa. Unfortunately, he had died up on K2 the previous year trying to rescue a group of climbers. Only one of the climbers survived. K2 was discovered in 1856 by a surveyor named T.G. Montgomery. The K stands for Karakoram. The 2 means it was the second peak Montgomery listed on his survey. At 28,250 feet, it's a bit shorter than Everest, but most climbers agree it's a lot harder to reach the summit. I told Sanjo how sorry I was to hear about his father, but he shrugged it off, saying he hardly knew his dad. He and his 2 younger sisters, had spent most of their lives at a private boarding school in northern India. My sisters and I only came back to Kathmandu on holiday, he said. My father was usually up on the mountain during those times. Hearing about his sisters caused a little ache in my belly for Paul and Patrice, but it went away as I watched Sanjo casually tie a length of spectra cord to a hex slung with a triple fisherman's knot. Where did you learn to climb? I asked. My grandfather instructed me, he answered. His English was better than mine. He had kind of a British Indian accent. Mine was kind of a Bronx, Cody, Wyoming accent, which did not sound nearly as cool as or refined as his. It's fancy. So you're on holiday? No, Sanjo answered. When my father died, we did not have the funds to keep all 3 of us in school. The tuition was very expensive. My sisters are still in school, and I'm here to find work as they can stay there, so they can stay there. Without a formal education, there is no future for girls in Kathmandu. I would like to go back to school myself, but it is unlikely I will be able to. It is more important that my sisters attend school than it is for me. Sanjo wasn't much older than I was, and I wonder what kind of job he could get that would pay the tuition. He looked at my altimeter watch, which he had been playing with throughout lunch. We should leave soon. Sopas is waiting for us at the Indriani temple. I turned off the stove and put the dishes in the bathroom sink. Did you know there's a dining room here in the hotel? Sanjo asked. I've not dined there myself, but I hear it is quite excellent. Yeah, I ate there this morning. It's great. The reason I cooked, well, the gear. Sanjo smiled. He knew exactly what I was talking about. Our transportation to the temple was the saddest motorcycle I had ever seen. There was more silver duct tape on it than chrome. It took him 6 vicious kicks to get it started, and when it finally caught, the motorcycle belched out a column of gray smoke so thick I thought the bike had burst into flames along with my new friend. But the smoke cleared, revealing a coughing Sanjo with tears running down his face and a mostly intact motorcycle, except for the bolt lying in a pool of oil under the engine. It is much better when we are moving forward, he gasped. In this way, the smoke cannot catch us. I thought about running up to the room and grabbing my climbing helmet, but I was afraid Sanjo might die of asphyxiation before I got back, so I climbed on behind him and we lurched into traffic. So off they went. Sanjo yelled something that sounded like, only 2 root beers, let's go. But I think he meant that his motorcycle only had 2 foot gears, fast and slow. He was right about our exhaust being behind us. The problem was that we were now speeding through everyone else's exhaust. For the next 20 minutes, I squeezed shut my eyes that were now speeding through everyone else. Sorry. I squeezed my eyes. Sorry. I squeezed shut my burning eyes, and buried my face in his back, thereby missing most of Kathmandu. We have arrived, Sanjo announced. I unclutched my sweaty hands and opened my eyes. You must remove your shoes before entering the temple. I took them off and put them next to about 50 other pairs of shoes and sandals. If you don't mind my asking, Sanjo said, what happened to your face? It got frozen to a building. Sanjo laughed. No, really? Climbing accident, I said. That's what I thought. I followed him into the Indrayani temple, which was like walking into another world, one where people whispered rather than shouted. There were no wandering cows. We had narrowly missed 3 of them on the way over. No horns honking, no screeching tires. The smell of flowers and incense saturated the air. Worshippers were kneeling in front of shrines, spinning prayer wheels, lighting butter lamps. Mystery possibilities. This was the Kathmandu I had expected. Sanjo led me to a teak bench. To a teak bench. Give me 1 second, guys. Sorry. Okay, I'm sorry about that. Sanjo led me to a teak bench in the shade of a banyan tree. We sat for a while watching the orange-robed monks talking quietly to visitors and offering them blessings. Which one's Zopa? I whispered. None of these. Shouldn't we let him know we're here? Sanjo shook his head. He'll be along when he's ready. Waiting again, but I didn't mind. I spent the time trying to figure out how to gracefully bow out of a return trip to the hotel on that death motorcycle. Here he comes, Sanjo said. I expected Zopa to be a frail, old, holy man, and the monk striding towards us was old, but he was anything but frail. His arm and calf muscles, what I could see of them beneath the hem of his orange robe, were well defined and powerful. You'd expect a Buddhist monk to have a spiritual presence, but whatever spirituality Zopa had was overwhelmed by his physical presence. When he reached us, he put his palms together and bowed. I followed Sanjo's lead by getting to my feet and returning the bow. Zopa looked me over, frowning at the scabs on my face and ear. Climbing accident, Sanjo explained. Zopa pointed at my bandaged fingers. Split nails, I explained nervously. They're almost healed. You look like your father, Zopa said. Actually, I look more like my mother, but I wasn't about to disagree with him. How did you get here? Motorcycle, Sanjo said. Zopa shook his head in disgust. When you go back, take a taxi. He reached into a fold in his robe and came out with a roll of rupees as big as his fist. I didn't think Buddhist monks were even supposed to look at money. He peeled out half an inch of bills and handed them to Sanjo. What about my motorcycle? Sanjo asked. If you're lucky, Zopa said, someone will steal it. Wait for me at the hotel. The monk turned and walked away. I was relieved about the taxi, but didn't explain why we had come all the way down to the Indrayani temple. But that didn't explain why we had come all the way down to the Indrayani temple. When I asked Sanjo about it, he shrugged and said that Zopa had his way of doing things. Mysterious ways, as it turned out, because when we got back to the hotel, Zopa was already waiting for us in the lobby. I had recognized him at first because the orange robe had been replaced by regular street clothes and an expensive-looking pair of sunglasses. The sunglasses made him look like some kind of celebrity, which I suppose he was to the trekkers and climbers gathered around him. It had taken us 10 minutes tops to catch a taxi outside of the temple. We drove straight to the hotel and traffic wasn't any worse than it had been on the motorcycle on the way to the temple. And yet, there was Zopa chatting with the hotel staff and guests as if he had been there all afternoon. I looked at Sanjo expecting him to be as shocked as I was. He wasn't. Zopa does things like that, he said. How? Another shrug, which I learned later was everyone's answer to questions about Zopa. You'll get used to it, Sanjo added, then went over and greeted the vacationing monk. Now you're probably wondering why I didn't ask Zopa myself. Believe me, I was tempted, but I didn't think he would tell me, or worse, he might give me some reasonable explanation. It's sort of like asking a magician to tell you how he does a trick, or asking a tagger how he got those 17 freight cars painted in a single night. It's all about the mystery. Sometimes it's better not to ask. Up in the room, Zopa sorted through the gear, putting it in different piles, while Sanjo and I watched. Once in a while, he would stop and have me try something on, saying fits or doesn't fit. When he was finished, there were three piles. He pointed to one of the piles. We will take this and trade for things that fit. My boots, blue snowsuit, and several other items of clothing were in a separate pile with some other stuff. I pointed out that none of the things in that pile fit either. I have another use for it, Zopa said. I didn't know what that could be, but I didn't pursue it. Instead, I pointed to the trade pile, which had several $100s worth of pitons, cams, ropes, and other expensive equipment. This gear is brand new, I said. You won't need it to get up Sagarmatha. Sorry. This is what the Nepalese call Everest. My dad bought it, I argued. He might need it. Your father told me to make sure that you have everything you need to climb the mountain. How much money do you have? I told him, but I didn't mention the credit card mom had given me. I didn't think she'd be happy about a huge bill for Everest gear. It's not enough to get things you will need, Zopa said. Hopefully we will be able to trade all this. He started to gather up the gear from the trade pile. Best not to argue, Sanjo whispered, and he and I helped haul the gear downstairs where a Toyota truck and driver were waiting for us. It took hours to get the replacement gear. In the process, I got quite a tour of Kathmandu. It seemed that most of the places Zopa liked to shop were located down dark, scary alleys. He was warmly greeted wherever we went until the bartering started. So they started trading. When he and the proprietor would end up in a shouting match until a bargain was struck. The most difficult thing to find were my boots. I'd try on a pair I liked, tell Zopa they fit great. Then he would make me walk and shake his head. Not right, he'd say. What do you mean? I'd insist. They fit great. Too small, he'd say. But when your toes fall off inside from the swelling and pinching, they will fit perfectly. We finally agreed on a pair that did fit great, but they were pretty battered up on the inside. In fact, all the stuff we bought was banged up. I hope this gear wasn't taken from dead climbers, I said offhandedly. Zopa looked horrified. Bad luck to use gear of the dead. No, this is from people who come to Kathmandu to climb and decided it's better to stay in bar and drink. I must have looked horrified myself. Don't think ill of them, he said. They lived. Zopa also bought a few things for himself and Sanjo, who I guess was coming with us to base camp by the gear he was getting. Unlike me, he listened carefully to Zopa's opinion and bowed every time the monk gave him something. It was late when we got back to the hotel. We went up to the room, packed everything, then loaded it into the truck. We leave for Tibet tomorrow morning at 6, Zopa said. He and Sanjo got into the truck and drove away. Alrighty, that was a lot going on, but I mean, the experience of him meeting Sanjo, he calls him his new friend, and it looks like he's going to go up to base camp as well. And he questions like why they even went to the Indrayani temple, and we're not sure because that shows us the mystery of Zopa and how he does things, and it's just like we don't know the reasons, but he knows his reasons. So it's quite interesting how they ended up traveling only to travel back, and then poor Sanjo ends up losing his motorcycle, which Zopa's like, hopefully someone steals it because it seems like a death trap, right? So, all right, so they're getting the gear for him and they're getting ready to go. They're leaving for Tibet the next day at 6. Let's see how that unfolds. Go ahead and do your Google Forms or the prompt that follows.